Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm delighted that A Celtic State of Mind is partnering Celtic Down Under for the match days this season, even if, because of the times, etc., we can't get anyone on from Celtic Down Under. We will be streaming live on their Twitter page as well as on our own YouTube page. So welcome to the show once again. Liam, hopefully we'll see a wee bit more of you this season as well. Laura and I will be familiar to the posse who tune in on the match days. Quite a second half, it's got to be said. Laura, I'm going to start with you because we're sitting at half time saying, how do we break this down? We've seen it so often. By the way, credit to Ross County. They're resolute. They do what they have to do to try and get the points. And I think Malcolm Mackay was talking this week about the fact that their ambition this season is to stay in the league, even though they finished sixth last term. So when you're coming up against a Celtic side that is all guns blazing, if you like, I get the style in which they played in the first half. However, we had to find a way, and a way we did find, although it wasn't that easy, was it? What did you make of that second half?
No, I mean, one change that was forced upon us because of Maeda getting a knock at the end of the first half was actually one that I wanted to happen anyway, was Abada came on, and that proved to be quite a vital change later on in the match, obviously. But at the start of the second half, it seemed like it was going to be much of a muchness. I actually think the key factor in how the second half panned out was, you know, it's become a bit of a cliche, but Celtic adopting Ange's mentality of we never stop, and another point that Liam raised at half time of you know, just proving to be fitter and more more intense in what we were doing than Ross County, and it eventually tired them out. We were always going to find a way through it as long as we kept stretching them, which we did. But I mean, I have to say credit to Ross County for as much of the match as they possibly could have. They did make it difficult for us, but I think the second half just the differences between the teams told in the end, and I would say probably the 3-1 went on to make it look like a bit more of a convincing victory than it was, but they really were struggling towards the end of the match, and I think that's why we ended up bagging the 2 goals that we did.
See, at half time, Liam, I'm going to admit that, you get kind of lost in the emotion of watching it as a fan, and you think to yourself, well, we can't drop points here. We seriously cannot drop points. And it would be easy for people like us to panic at half time. We were asking the question, how do you break it down? Well, there was one forced change, but Ange just stuck to his guns, didn't he? I mean, and he knew that he would grind this side down, and we had enough quality, and we'll get on to some of the quality, but we had enough quality to win this game.
I mean, that's it, exactly. Laura summed it up. We never stop. And I think that particularly the last 15 minutes of the game really typified that. It was so good to see the way that the whole team just kept working and kept probing. And my only disappointment is that when Big Jens got the goal, for a split second I thought it was Carter Vickers, and I had a couple of quid on him to score. But yeah, I think it just shows. There's also a wee psychological aspect to this, that we were 1 goal ahead of they who we shall not speak of going into today's game. And they went 2-0 up about 30 seconds before we went 3-1 up. So had we not got that third goal, they would have drawn level with us on goal difference. As it stands, we're still a goal ahead of them. So just a wee psychological one.
The thing with that though, Liam, I think the fine margin of last season, and I spoke about this coming up to this game at the weekend. If you were to ask me based on the February performance at Celtic Park, I would tell you that Celtic were miles ahead of Rangers, right? But the table tells us we were 4 points ahead of Rangers over the season. So the fine margins, like you're pointing out there, are very important, even in match day 2. So I think it's important to point out that, I've got to say that every single time Celtic play, I am looking at the other results to see where our challenger is in terms of their performance. Now, you mentioned, Laura, about Maeda coming off to be replaced by Abada, and I guess it begs the question, where is Abada in the great scheme of things? Because if you were to ask me to write down what I believe is our strongest 11, Abada's in it. But based on the pre-season form, Maeda deserved to start against Aberdeen, and indeed he deserved to start today. But Abada comes on, he made a massive impact, obviously he scored a goal, but he did make a big impact in the second half. Where are we with Abada? Has he played his way in, even if Maeda wasn't injured? Has he done enough to get that starting jersey?
Maeda's a strange one because if you ask me if I think he's done anything wrong, I would say no. But he doesn't seem to provide as many impactful moments as either Jota or Abada for me. That's taken into account an entire 90 minutes for all three of them. But, you know, Abada and Jota specifically, you can name numerous memorable moments from last season and now a couple from this season that they've contributed. I think you would struggle to name as many from Maeda. But another interesting point is I actually think Abada's our strongest on the right-hand side of a front three. I don't think Jota's the strongest right-sided player that we've got because I think he's actually much more effective cutting in from the left-hand side. We talked about that at half-time, and I still think that's the case. I think it's. I know it was from a set piece, but he swung that ball in with his right foot from the left-hand side for the Jents goal. He's obviously a threat running at players and things like that and shooting on his stronger right foot. So I think personally, although you could make a case for Maeda being a better player than certainly Abada and in some ways possibly Jota, I think based on the system that we play, for me personally, the strongest 11 includes Jota on the left-hand side and Abada on the right.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to speak about Jota because as well as having a hat-trick of assists, if that's such a thing in the modern game, in the first half he did look as though he was going to create something. I mean, there was a very similar move to the Aberdeen goal, but as you were saying, Laura, he comes in from the right-hand side, he doesn't get the goal. And perhaps he is better cutting in from the left onto his right. I would tend to agree with that. What about Abada, though, for yourself, Liam? Is he a player who... I know he didn't play every game last season, but I mean, as a breakthrough season, signed him as a 19-year-old. I was talking this week about the impact of near beats on his big brother. He misses him, and etc., etc. But in a 20-year-old Abada, we have got a player who cannot be underestimated. I mean, we talk about the performances of Jota and Hatate and Kyogo, but Abada sometimes goes under the radar a wee bit. It was a good reminder that he is still a fantastic, not only a prospect, but a fantastic right winger, as Laura says. I think that is his best position. Does he get a starting berth for you?
Well, I mean, I'm a wee bit biased in this respect because, as I was saying to Laura, Maeda is my favourite player. I've been following him for a number of years. He used to play for my local team here. And I would always have Maeda in my starting 11 just because of his versatility. I think you can deploy him pretty much anywhere across the front three as required, whereas Abada is a better right winger, but he is a right winger. Mm-hmm. There were times last season when, due to injury, we played Abada up front, whatever, and he could do a job there. But if push came to shove, I would much rather have, obviously Kyogo, Giakoumakis, Maeda, or possibly even Jota through the middle than Abada. But it's a really great position that we're in now, where we're not talking about who has underperformed and who we're going to drop. It's like, we've got two really good players. Which one do we play?
Yeah,
it's a great position to be in.
It is. We had that last season with Ralston and Juranovic, and I think most of us, certainly within the Axon team, are looking at having that replicated on the left-hand side of defence. We brought in Bernabe. We wanted it in the goalkeeper department, and we brought in Siegrist. And, when we then look at the central defensive partnership of Starfelt and Carter-Vickers, we prayed that none of them would get injured because we didn't really want any kind of drop-off in quality. And that leads me on nicely to talk about Maurice Gents, because obviously in the first half, we spoke at half-time, Laura was saying, yeah, we're impressed, but he didn't really have much in the way of a challenge in the first half. In the second half, he comes up, he scores what looked to be a timely winner at 2-1, and by God, he took it well as well. Is he the aerial threat that we've been crying out for some time?
I think he is. I think he showed a lot of strengths, obviously, with the goal. He showed an aerial threat, and that, as a team, I think we should be excited about that, because that's 2 weeks in a row we've had a centre-back heading a goal for us, so it's obvious that being a threat from a set piece is going to be something that we can hopefully rely on during the season. But I think looking at his game more widely, I think there's possibly still questions to be asked about his defensive skills, because he obviously got that yellow card for taking down the Ross County striker in a somewhat clumsy manner, although I think he was well beaten. But the thing that I really liked about him and really enjoyed was something that we touched on before the game, was the fact that he's a predominantly left-footed player. When you've got Cameron Carter-Vickers right-footed, I think it gives us a lot to play with in terms of distribution from the back. And I think, not to jump on Carol Starfelt's back too much, but I think as much as Starfelt has improved and settled into life at Celtic, I think it's just very clear to me that Jens is the better of the two on the ball and in possession, and certainly domestically that's going to be a big plus for us going forward. I think he's done enough to earn a starting spot for the next few weeks at least, until somebody comes and really takes it off him. But in terms of a debut, it's about as strong a debut as I could hope for from somebody in his position.
Yeah, definitely. And a difficult place to make your debut as well. We're talking about having players, a couple of players, Liam, in a position and fighting over the jersey, which is brilliant for competition. And what we now have is Carter-Vickers and Starfelt, who were the first picks last season, and we also have the other two in Jens and Welsh, both scoring goals in the first two games of the season, and both playing particularly well. I thought Welsh was brilliant last week. It kind of leaves Julian out in the cold, but the question I'm going to ask you, Liam, are you happy with those four? If we come out of the transfer window, regardless of what happens to Julien, because I'm sure they're trying to tie up a deal with him, and move him on, would you be happy to run with the four at the back?
Yeah, I would. In terms of Europe, I think Carter-Vickers, Starfelt and Jens are all capable of doing the job at that level. Welsh may well grow into a player who can perform at that level, but I think he's still a wee bit raw, and to that extent. But I would have no qualms at all about deploying Welsh in any game in Scotland, including a game against Rangers. I think he's got the character to handle domestic football. But, you raised an interesting point. You're talking about Welsh scoring last week. We've scored 5 goals in our first 2 league games, and it's been 5 different goal scorers. That just shows you we literally have goals coming from all over the pitch.
Yeah.
And that is a really, really good sign of things to come.
It really is. Just during the week there, I was having a look at last season, and we as Celtic fans have maybe been spoilt over the years with phenomenal goal scorers. But when I look at last season, again, it was spread over the team. Liam, I think it's a great point you make, because even like the top goal scorer in a Celtic jersey, we've seen guys like Henrik Larsson scoring over 50 goals, Lee Griffiths scoring over 40, Scott McDonald 30 odd goals in a season. But last season our top league goal scorer was Giakoumakis with 13. And Kyogo Furuhashi got 20 overall in all competitive games. So I think it's a great point you make, because we're not relying on just one talisman up top. If he doesn't score a goal, you're struggling. It's spread right across the side. So I think it's a great point. One well made there, actually. 5 goals, 5 goal scorers. I want to bring in some comments from, I'm thinking, a jubilant Celtic support. Thanks everybody for following us and watching today. We're well over 1,000 live watching on YouTube and on Celtic Down Under's Twitter as well. But Liam, before we do that, I want to know where we are over in Japan, where you are. I mean, in terms of the exposure of Celtic and how that is now sitting, because obviously we went something like 15 years from the Nakamura being an absolute superstar over here, and I'm sure upping the brand and the tempo and the exposure over in Japan. What is it like now over there in terms of Celtic and the coverage Celtic are receiving?
Well, from about last October onwards, the main sort of streaming app in Japan that streams all the English Premier League football started streaming selected Scottish Premier League games. So that was basically the same games that you guys get on Premier Sports, we get on this app. Like, we've got the Hibs and Hearts game tomorrow, for example. And we'll have all of the games against Old Firm FC when the time comes. The thing that I think Celtic could do a wee bit better, actually, is in terms of the marketing side of it. Because when I go to I'm going to Tokyo with my wife next week, And whenever we're in Tokyo, I always like to have a look at the football shops, because I collect football shirts. It's a hobby of mine. And you see like Arsenal kits, you see Bayern Munich kits, you see Barcelona, Real Madrid. I think there's about 2 or 3 Adidas stores in Tokyo, and none of them have Celtic shirts, as far as I'm aware. Right. I've got, hopefully, my new tops arriving on Monday, but I had to order them from Scotland. That's the only way that we in Japan can get them, is to order them from the Celtic site. And the Celtic Japanese site doesn't quite work the way it should, because although it's in Japanese, it's still giving prices and stuff in English.
Right.
And my wife wanted to get me a top for like a surprise present. I had to do it myself because she couldn't navigate. She didn't know how much a pound was, whatever, in yen, and it's a wee bit sloppy.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that feedback reaches its way back to the club, because
I hope so.
Listen, the first priority is you get the player of quality, but if a secondary benefit of that is that your exposure and your brand and your merchandise is increasing, then you've got to capitalise on it, and it doesn't sound as though we're doing it 100%, unfortunately. Paul McLean comes in. Defence is a serious issue for Celtic regardless of who is in it. Do you agree with that, Laura?
Not based on today's performance, I don't think. I unfortunately missed the Ross County goal because the source I was watching it on went down, so that was unfortunate. But I didn't think they did anything particularly wrong besides that kind of clumsy challenge from Jens to give away the free kick, which, by the way, I wanted to bring up because the resultant save from Joe Hart from that free kick was absolutely unreal. Like, one of the best saves I think I've seen a Celtic goalkeeper make. He yet again proved today, and somebody in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we were still 1 each at that point, so we could have gone 2-1 down. The momentum shift that might have provided for Ross County, or the blow that might have been to us at that stage in the game, could have been momentous, and I think that single save from him just epitomised everything he's brought to Celtic since he came, and just proves that, Siegrist has come in and there has been questions about, will he take the number 1 shirt off of Joe Hart? Will he become first choice? He might well do, but he's going to have a fight on his hands to get between the sticks, I think.
I'm glad you brought it up. I've got it here, Joe Hart. We need to speak about Joe Hart because, since he's come in, Liam, he has been a revelation. It was at a point where we really needed calm, experienced heads coming into the club, and he did come in and provide that. You saw time and time again. I remember a game up at Dundee where Juranovic was getting involved, and he's basically grabbed him and shoved him into the goal net just to get him out of the harm's way. And there's been loads and loads of occasions where he has been the peacemaker, basically threatening to walk off the park at Ibrox because of the broken glass. And I think that what he's brought, not just his performances but off the pitch, has been invaluable. I mean, what a £1 million buy he's been. And then I think coming into season number 2, you're looking at him thinking, all right, so we've brought in somebody who might be a contender, might be a challenger for the jersey. And you see a performance like that today, and in particular the save that Laura's pointed out. And again, maybe it is down to the fact that there's somebody breathing down his neck because if you make a mistake, you might get dropped for Siegrist. How impressed have you been, and in particular today, with Joe Hart?
Joe Hart is the epitome of everything I love about Celtic, honestly. It's great when you have a guy like Joe Hart who had no prior connection to Celtic, was obviously aware of who we were and whatever, but no affiliation with the club previously, comes to us as a guy whose career was on the wane and needed to be loved, needed to be backed, and the supporters did that, and he has totally bought in to the whole ethos of Celtic, and it's really, really great when you see that in a player, and it shows in his performances as well, because he is that bit more determined to be the best keeper he can be, because he wants to repay the faith that Ange has shown in him, the faith that we've shown in him, and the club is benefiting so much from that. And Siegrist will become a better goalkeeper as well from being around a guy like Joe Hart. I mean, he's England's second all-time capped goalkeeper, I believe. I think it's only Peter Shilton that has more caps. And that's really saying something, you know?
That's a great point, because you think about a player coming in and the performance of the first pick improving, but like you say, the experience of Joe Hart, and you know what it's like with goalkeepers. They do tend to stick together and obviously work quite intensely together on the training pitch. So yeah, great point that should Joe Hart need rested, or if there's an emergency and you're looking at Seagrass, you think to yourself, yeah, it's a safe pair of gloves. I think a lot of Celtic fans were feeling like this, just particularly when the second goal went, and then the third goal gives us a wee bit of a cushion forever and ever. Celtic, yes, thanks for joining us, as are about 1,100 others watching the stream on Celtic Down Under's Twitter and simultaneously on Axom's YouTube channel. Stephen Sloan, there's going to be a few moments like that this season, I'm sure. And Egyptian King, big gents, what a man. There's plenty more to talk about, and I think that let's go through the goals then. The opener by Kyogo, like you say, Liam, it was quite quick off the mark after our halftime show, and there was a suggestion from a few in the comments that Kyogo should get hooked for Giakoumakis, but Laura Ange stayed calm, played the game. Kyogo gets the opening goal. Let's not forget how important Kyogo is to the Celtic side.
Yeah, I think so. I think we talk about it a lot, but and Liam just said there about Joe Hart being the epitome of everything Celtic. If he is, then I think Kyogo's the epitome of everything Ange on the pitch, and that he really doesn't stop going. He doesn't stop trying, even if it looks like, as it did in the first half, he's maybe running down a few dead ends or roads to nothing. He never seems to tire or to give up the ghost. You never see him walking around with his head hanging low. So that I would imagine is an infectious quality to have in a player, and it's something that's provided him with so many moments over the past year or so where you've thought he's maybe been out of a game and he's proved pivotal in that moment. Even with the goal itself, it was he was right in the 6-yard box waiting for it, in the right position at the right time. That's what you've got to do as a striker. You've got to take those chances with those runs. He did it. Had he lost his head or let his head go down, he might not have been in the right position for that goal, but he was, and obviously came out for the second half all guns blazing, because it was early enough for us not to even be aware it happened by the time we came off the air. But yeah, I think, I've been critical of Kyogo at various points for missing chances, as has everybody on Axom, I think, at some point. But what you can't seem to do is dissuade him from keeping going, and he seems to do that, and he always comes up with the goods in the end. Yeah,
I think after the Aberdeen game, there might have been a couple of chances, Liam, that a fully firing Kyogo would have scored. But I mean, today, wee bit of criticism at half time. He comes out and scores a goal. Is he still the first choice to lead the line for you?
I think that depends on who we're playing. On reflection, it might actually have made more sense to start with Giakoumakis today against a team that is going to play as physical a game as Ross County did. But then again, Kyogo scores the opening goal, so that kind of defeats that point. So I don't really know. But I think that, again, it's great that we have that adaptability, that we have two very different in style, but equally potent strikers who we can deploy as and when needed. Kyogo's a better all-round player for me, but in certain games against certain teams, Giakoumakis will be more effective. So I could see both of them getting 15 to 20 goals this season quite easily.
And that, that's just fine. It's like we were saying before, relying or over-relying on some kind of talismanic forward sometimes can come back to haunt you if indeed that person is injured, sold, suspended or otherwise off the boil. And I think that when you're looking at these goals, we cannot go through this show and not talk about the absolute sheer brilliance of Jota. Laura, you seen him last season. He was entertaining. He was a flair player. And I think that, we're going into the transfer window saying, well, which of the two do you want to keep the most? Because, it was beyond our wildest dreams that we would keep them both in CCV and Jota. We have kept them both permanently. Great bit of business by our club. And Jota seems to have even upped his game another level. if that is possible. Certainly in the first couple of games, he has looked on fire. And if he keeps this up, I mean, he could be our star man. 3 assists, and I agree with you. I think he is better on the left-hand side, but he's got that adaptability. Sometimes if you're not getting anything out the fullback, you can switch it up, which is great. How impressed have you been with Jota so far this season?
Do you know what I love about Jota even more than his ability and his skill and his natural footballing ability is everything about his attitude? And by that I mean, I like a player who thinks it's their sole responsibility to be the man on whom everybody relies to make that bit of magic. He did it last week for us against Aberdeen. He's provided it with the assists this week. So many players can hide away and let a game pass them by. He absolutely does not do that. There was one point actually when we scored the third goal, I think it was. Oh no, sorry, the first goal. The first goal, it cuts over and he's over at Ange just getting a drink or something like that. And his delight and celebration in scoring that first goal when he wasn't even celebrating with the rest of the team was there for all to see. So he's got the right mix for me of the ego to think he can be the man that makes the difference, but not so much ego that he doesn't play for the team. And I think he's got the exact right mix of that. And that's why I think he'll be such a vital cog in our machine for the rest of this season, because when you need him to make moments of magic, he brings them. And when you need him to be there as a team player, he brings that as well. So, and the other thing as well, psychologically for him, it must be a big boost for him to know that Celtic... Sometimes I think when you buy a player having not had them play for you, you're taking a chance, you're taking a gamble on whether they're going to be good for you. But I think as a player, it must be an extreme validation of your worth and your ability that they've seen you play for them for a year and say, yeah, we're going to go and spend 7 million on you. Because the boost in confidence that must bring him, it must be insane. And he must think, they want me here. They want me to make the difference, having seen what I can do. And he's definitely proven to be, he'll have paid off that in no time, I would say.
He's one of the guys that you look at some of the other similar types. And what I mean by that is positional rather than the actual style that we've had coming in on loan. We've had a couple of loan deals with Paddy Roberts, a couple of loan deals with El Yunusi. And that's all rather than... making it permanent. And then sometimes if you look at the entertaining players and teams, they weren't the team players, Liam. I always remember, I loved watching, and by the way, this has nothing to do with his political beliefs, I loved watching, as a footballer, Paolo Di Canio. But when he came in, Celtic weren't as good a side as they were the previous season. The previous season, we went the whole league's campaign and lost 1 game. And there was less of that team player mentality with a guy like Di Canio. Jota doesn't suffer from that. He's bought into the Ange system. When he's getting interviewed, he even says "I" in a great Portuguese kind of manner. He's going to be massive for us this season.
Although he does struggle understanding Declan, as I can tell you firsthand.
Declan loved that, didn't he? What was it Jota says to him? That's too Scottish.
He says, "Wow, that." He said, I could see, I was watching his face as Declan was talking, and he went. Declan got to the end of his question and he just went, "Wow, that was so Scottish. You'll need to say that again."
I hope it's on YouTube. Definitely get that watched.
That's my wife says that to me if ever we're watching a game together. She's like, "Don't have any more than 3 beers." Why? She said, "Because you get too Scottish after that. I can't understand you."
Oh, poor Dick. He knows we love him. He knows we love him. But again, looking at some of the comments coming in just after the stream started, and it was just absolute jubilation. You get grown men who find it difficult all week to show their emotions, and then Celtic score a goal and it all changes. Absolutely love that. Egyptian King comes in. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. I missed the gents and Abada goals because my stream died like old co in 2012. Oh, my eyesight's really bad. I wasn't going to bring that up, Egyptian King, but thanks for sharing it with us.
Yes.
Talking about streams dying, you've already picked up, Liam, and I'm not going to go on a rant or a moan. I just want the best for Celtic and I want the best for our fan base. But, I would have expected us even to push the boat out and have our own store in Japan, never mind not stocking the jerseys in the Adidas store. And again, the Celtic TV situation whereby... we need a worldwide membership scheme that we are providing our worldwide fan base with a product, content, etc., that can get paid for and actually work against the fact that guys like you can't buy a season ticket. Is that something that there is engagement with the club? Is there any way that you can put the points across to them?
Unfortunately, no. I have reached out to Celtic a couple of years ago, and actually said to them, Japan is an untapped market for you. And I actually said to them, look, I got conversational Japanese ability. I have previous sales experience in Japan. If you want to set up like a warehouse in Japan to stock Celtic stuff, I could then facilitate that getting into Adidas stores or Amazon Japan or whatever. I mean, I've got a friend who actually works for Amazon Japan as well. I know the people that can do these things, but the club didn't even acknowledge my email, unfortunately. And, I don't know if you guys know anybody within the club, but I would love to have a conversation with somebody who might be in a position to make those kind of things happen, because Japan is crying out for it, honestly.
No, that's interesting, because
that's absolutely unreal. That I just assumed this is the problem with living down the road from the stadium. Sometimes is you just assume, we've signed 3 Japanese players. With the same happened with Nakamura. You saw a big upturn in Japanese tourists attending games and things like that, and you just assume that we're taking stock and making the most of the commercial opportunities that will come off the back of that back in Japan, whether it's making sure we have TV streams of the games going back, but even something so simple like getting shirts into the stores. I can't believe there's Adidas stores in Tokyo. I mean, I think Adidas stores in Tokyo should have Celtic strips anyway, because we are one of the biggest, most recognisable shirts in the world.
Yeah.
But then when you add in the fact we've got 3 international Japanese players playing for our team, and it's unreal that it's not the case.
I mean, no disrespect to any particular clubs, but when you see like some what I would describe as kind of mid-table English clubs have their stuff all over Tokyo, and Celtic don't, that really is, because those teams have no Japanese presence, and yet we have 2 current and probably 2 future internationals in the team, and that the thing is as well, it's like the Japanese love their football. Like, they will, once they support a team, the passion they have. I mean, the thing is with the J League, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, excuse me, but the J League in its current form is only 30 years old, right? So none of the teams here have the history that Celtic does. Japanese fans love a historical narrative. They love if there's a bit of a political edge to it as well, because their teams here don't have that. The biggest teams in Japan, Gamba Osaka was basically a Panasonic Works team. Urawa Reds are owned by Mitsubishi. They're all basically corporate teams, right? Whereas Celtic has this 130 years of history that is just unparalleled. Even without the Japanese players, I think there's a great pitch you can make to Japanese people to say, become a Celtic fan, and a lot of them would buy into it,
Well, listen, I do have a couple of contacts which I'm going to email over, because I've been dealing with the club for my long-anticipated 4th book. I'm not going to use this as an opportunity to plug the book, but I will.
It fits very well with the whole shirt shops and all that.
Well, listen though, I'm going to plug something, right? I'm going to play a little clip. Now, you might be thinking, why on earth are you playing a clip of a band from Nottingham? What's that got to do with Celtic? You only do that on a Thursday with JP. Well, I'm actually going to play this clip, so bear with me for a second and we will bring it up. And the clip is with a band, as I say, from Nottingham. Spot the guitar player on the left. Look at that tracksuit. So he comes up to the studio here in Dalkeith to play a session for us. And don't be dismayed by the colour of his guitar, a beautiful Gretsch guitar. Look at the tracksuit he's wearing. So we get talking and I'm saying, what's the Celtic link, right? So I'm going to put that on the full screen. I'm going to play it, and this is his answer.
No, yeah, the Celtic link of us, it's, I say, my dad's side of the family is from up here, from Bonnybridge, that way. Typical Catholics, I support Celtic. Yeah, then my dad's from my dad was born in Nottingham. He's still there, so obviously that Celtic thing has passed down to him. And it's passed down to me and you, innit? That's it. No, you have no choice. That's it. It runs through your veins, doesn't it? So, yeah, that's pretty much where that comes from, really.
We loved the band so much that we invited them up to play a gig. So they're actually coming up to play a gig in my hometown of Dunfermline. It's actually a city now, but yeah, it's Friday. And because you watch Axom, you can get 20% off ticket prices. The link is underneath the video. So that's my shameless plug this week. He comes up, he's Celtic daft, his old man's with him, he's Celtic daft, the granddad's Celtic daft. Brilliant story. Watch the session, come to the gig on Friday and support a Celtic supporting Nottingham band. There you go. There's always a link. There's always a link.
I'll tell you a wee link to Nottingham. My sister is a native of Nottingham. My mum and dad lived down there for 5 years or something in the 80s. My sister was born down there, so my Celtic supporting family were spreading Celtic news in the 80s in Nottingham as well. So there you go. That's another link.
Nice links. And we've also got Martin O'Neill as well. So nice links to Nottingham. Come up and watch the band on Friday because we're putting a gig on in Dunfermline. Listen, I've really enjoyed that today, despite the technical glitches at half-time where Lawrence and I couldn't get online. I probably pressed the wrong button. That always happens. But it's been great to talk to you, Liam, and hopefully during the season, because we've got this link up with your show now, yourself and Jared and the guys, and we will be covering the match day as a collaborative force, Celtic Down Under and Axom coming together for the games. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you two and everybody who's got involved in the comments. Thank you for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.